Welcome to Fueled by Strengths, a podcast and videocast about how we can live more authentically, be our best selves, and find more meaning and purpose in what we do, with a goal to thriving and flourishing in our personal and professional lives. I'm Becky, Strengthscope practitioner and career fulfillment coach, and I'm here to share insights, stories, tools, and coaching practices with you that can be used to help us become more balanced, confident, and empowered in our careers. So today I'm going to be talking about the 24 strengths from the Strengthscope assessment profiling tool that I use. And what I thought would be quite beneficial would be going over the 24 strengths just generally, so that you get a bit of an insight into what all these strengths are that we have the capacity to have. And then today I'm going to zoom in on just one aspect of them. Okay, so there's 4 aspects which I'll explain in a moment, and today I'm just going to focus on one, and then over the coming weeks, over the coming podcasts that I share, I'll then go into detail into the other 3. So hopefully it will give sort of a bit more of a stronger picture for you to build up where you see your strengths, how you see them showing up for you at work, and encourage you to sort of enhance that identification and exploration of them, and then optimizing them and building them into your daily lives, to be able to be to be working at your best self, to be accepting and valuing your authentic self, and all of those are the benefits of when we engage our strength that I've spoken about before and wrote about in my blog. Things like enhancing our well-being, boosting our performance, increasing our motivation, drive and focus, enabling us to make better decisions. When we're in that zone of strength, we're just functioning at our better self, our most optimal self. So hopefully today will give a little bit more of an insight into what those strengths are for you. So the 24 strengths that we have, I'm just going off Strengthscope because I am a Strengthscope practitioner. I am aware of other strengths profiling tools which are also effective, and I've mentioned them before. You've got the values in actions ones, you've got StrengthsFinder, or Clifton Strengths as it's called today, and various other ones that I can't remember the name of right now. But I'm focusing in on the 24 strengths of Strengthscope. So when you do the Strengthscope assessment, okay, you have a sort of a series of questions. I think there's about 180 to 200 questions, which seems a lot, but it only takes about 20 minutes all in all, 20 to 30 minutes. And there are a variety of questions all related to how you're acting and behaving and responding in professional scenarios, in work environment scenarios. And then what comes out of this assessment is your strengths profile. And it's a really in-depth report. It's like 15 pages, but the main pages are the first sort of 5 or 6. It outlines your 7 strengths that have come out from the report that you've done, from the assessment that you've done. The ones that are just really seem really prevalent in the way that you like to behave, in the way that you are drawn to working and being. Okay. And then the rest of the report then goes into a lot of detail about how these 7 strengths show up for you, and how these 7 strengths can go into overdrive. So when we're using them ineffectively, and then that leads us to that depletion of energy and exhaustion, and also ways to mitigate other performance risks as well. So what I'm gonna share now is the 24 strengths. I've got the list from Strengthscope here, and hopefully I'll be able to pop that in the section below this podcast or YouTube video. And it's split into 4 sections: emotional and relational, which is the more people-focused strengths, and execution and thinking, which are the more task-related strengths. So that more sort of action-oriented, task-oriented way of being. So the emotional strengths are courage, emotional control, enthusiasm, optimism, resilience, and self-confidence. The relational strengths that you might have are collaboration, compassion, developing others, empathy, leading, persuasiveness, and relationship building. The execution strengths that might be yours are decisiveness, efficiency, flexibility, initiative, results focus, and self-improvement. And lastly, the last quadrant, thinking strengths are common sense, creativity, critical thinking, detail orientation, and strategic mindedness. So just as I'm reading those strengths out, you might have resonated with some of them. You might have connected with, oh yes, I feel like that's sort of my natural way of being. I'm energized when I'm engaging those things. However, it's no good sort of just hearing the words. We need to know what they mean. Okay. And yes, they do show up for us in that sort of more individual way. So as I'm exploring the different definitions of these strengths, just bear in mind that, you know, it can be interpreted on that more individual level. And when I've done my coaching sessions on Strengthscope before, these strengths show up very differently for everybody. So it's just bearing that in mind. So I'm zooming in today on the relational strengths, okay? And it's those 7 strengths, sorry, that connect us to how we are with people, okay? And we're more drawn to, if we've got these relational strengths, we're more drawn to connecting with other people, and that's what gives us our energy, okay? That's what gives us our motivation. You know, it really does link to our meaning and purpose when we are able to really connect with people, essentially quite often on quite a deep level. So I'm going to start with collaboration. So Strengthscope definition of collaboration is you work cooperatively with others to overcome conflict and build towards a common goal, okay? I have, one of my 7 strengths is collaboration, as you may have heard before. And for me, this is all about my need to be around other people, sharing those ideas, coming up with you know, supportive plans and strategies together, and making you know, appropriate decisions, but we're all doing it. It's that sort of collaborative aspect. And for me, when I'm not able to collaborate, I'm really quite tired and quite unmotivated. And I've been realizing that quite recently as well, when I've reflected on sort of where I'm at and where I want to be going in the next few months. Collaboration is a really big part of that, because I do really thrive when I'm cooperating with other people. And because I'm working on my own, it's my own business, and I don't have that on a day-to-day, for me, collaboration can look like brainstorming ideas with a peer, with a friend or family member, or someone else that I sort of trust and perhaps can gain advice from. Okay, that's what collaboration can look like for me, and it makes me feel really energized when I can do it. The second relational strength is compassion. And that definition is you demonstrate a deep and genuine concern for the well-being of others. I guess you could link that to kindness. I know values in action have a strength there, which is called kindness. And again, this is another one of my strengths, and how it shows up for me is how I really thrive when I am able to support somebody else and really connect with where they're at with things. If we're talking about, you know, things in a working environment, if I can collaborate and engage with someone and connect with and provide that level of support, and then I'm engaging my compassion, and I really do feel extremely fulfilled and joyful. And don't get me wrong, sometimes it can be tiring, just because it is a lot of work, perhaps, you know, supporting someone through a struggle or a difficult situation. However, the act of doing it, and when I'm in it, is very energizing and sort of content-placed for me to be. And I feel like I'm really working at my best self. Developing others is the third relational strength, and that definition is you promote other people's learning and development to help them achieve their goals and fulfill their potential. Again, another one of my 7 significant strengths. And that's sort of a really nice definition there. I feel like it sums it up in a nutshell. When you've got developing others as a strength, you might be energized a lot of the time if you're able to really get involved in those tasks, in those projects where you're supporting others to reach their goals, and supporting others to really be their best selves and fulfill their potential. So I've spoken a little bit like that, of that, using that strength and how that showed up for me as a teacher, and obviously how it shows up for me as a coach. I'm continually engaged in supporting others to really develop themselves, and I feel very much in the right space there, and that's where I get my energy from a lot of the time. The fourth strength, relational strength, is empathy. You readily identify with other people's situations and can see things clearly from their perspective. I mean, you know, we've all heard the word, you know, being very empathetic. Empathy, usually if you're someone that's empathetic, you're a good listener. And it's that idea of being able to get in someone else's shoes as well, and sort of seeking to understand, or listening to understand, shall I say. And I think when you're someone that's got empathy as one of your strengths, you are really energized, perhaps when you're able to, you know, engage with people and encouraging that mutual understanding, and, you know, finding those ways of inclusivity, perhaps. You know, an example might be if you're an inclusion manager, inclusion team lead, and finding those ways where you can reach everybody's needs, or seek to be, you know, supportive of where everybody's at and what everybody needs. Then we've got the fifth strength, leading or leadership. The definition here is you take responsibility for influencing and motivating others to contribute to the goals and success of their team and organization. And I think, you know, we can all learn leadership skills, but when we talk about strengths in this sense, it's an innate quality of yours. You are able to step into a leadership position just so naturally, with so much ease, but with so much brilliance and energy and joyfulness. And so I think really here, we could sort of talk about, perhaps that's for another episode, about what does make a great leader. And not all of us have that innate leading strength within us. So it's not always energizing. Yeah, you might be able to learn these leadership skills, but if you don't have it as a strength, it can be quite exhausting, can be quite tiring, and sort of you're not necessarily always able to naturally feel what's right for the group that you're with. Whereas when you have leading as your own strength, I think particularly for me, as leading is one of mine, it's following my own intuition there of what the group needs to perform together as a team at their best self. And I'm able to sort of, influence and motivate that. Seeing that from that, I guess, more bird's eye perspective of how the team can work as a whole whilst being individuals within it. And so how that shows up for you is going to be, very varying depending on what work environment you're in. But if it's something that you feel naturally to step into, you're energized by it, and it feels something that works for you quite on a natural level, then it's likely that's one of your relational strengths. The last two, then, we've got persuasiveness, which is you are able to win agreement and support for a position or desired outcome. Now, I was toying around with how to talk about persuasiveness because persuasiveness is not one of my relational strengths. So I wanted to be able to articulate it in a way that was easy and accessible to understand, even if we don't have that as our own strength. Because obviously I'm not able to give a personal perspective on how it might show up in your life. However, if we just think about that general idea of you are someone that has just this beautiful ability to encourage and move people to a common decision. So if you think about if you're working in a team and you're leading on a project and various decisions have to be made, and there's a lot of sort of tornness and split decisions within the room, and but there's kind of, to you, there's a clear decision that needs to be made, and so you're really able to influence and guide the others to seeing your point of view and seeing that this is the best decision to move forward on. So I think perhaps persuasiveness could be seen as trying to influence on only pushing people or controlling people to what you want. Yeah, but that's not the idea. It's the idea of you have this really innate ability to see where it is that we need to go and guide everybody to that decision. The last one then is relationship building, and this one is about taking steps to build networks of contacts and act as a hub between people that you know. And I find this one quite interesting because it is on sort of, it's not necessarily one of my significant strengths, but it's high up there on my strengths. But I feel like I've got a lot to do there to develop that. Yeah, so even though it might feel quite natural for me to initiate new relationships, put people in touch with people, there's still some skills for me to learn there in terms of sort of effectively being able to do it. So if you think of how someone might be energized when they're relationship building, they just get an absolute buzz from connecting people together. I'm thinking of someone in mind that's really good at it. they just actively share contacts, their network, in any given situation. For example, I know someone that would be great for that. I know someone that would be really good for that. Why don't I put you in touch? And they're just absolutely beautiful at it, and it really energizes them. So they're just so, yeah, they've got this real flow with it. And it lights them up, and it gives them that meaning and that sense of purpose in their personal and professional life. So that's a bit of a sort of a general overview there of those relational strengths. I hope that was helpful. I hope that gave you a bit of an insight into what strengths can look like in our professional lives in that relational quadrant, and hoping that sort of enabled you to connect or resonate a little bit deeper with what your strengths might be, how they might show up for you. So next up will be emotional execution and thinking, and they will be covered in the weeks to come. And I'll take a deep dive there and hopefully give you an interesting insight into how they could be demonstrated when someone has those strengths. Thanks for joining today's conversation. If you want to find out more about how I support women to thrive, check out my website at rbgstrengthscoaching.co.uk, on LinkedIn at /rbgcoaching, and on Instagram at rbg_coaching. Being my most confident, authentic self. Until next time.